Hello, hello, hello. How are you today? I'm actually recording this uh, the first week of November, so there's just different kind of energies going around in the air, a lot of stress and anxiety. Anyway, that's not what today's video is about. I wanted to talk a little bit about the different stages of grief, different stages of leaving the church, and the effects that it can have on us. Um, so what I have found, what I've experienced for myself, and what I have found when working with other people that have been in traumatic or abusive church situations, or they've been wounded in the church. There doesn't always have to be a label or a name for it. It could just simply be that you were hurt by church leaders, and for whatever reason, you're not feeling safe, or you're not feeling like you want to be in your church any longer, or in a church organization any longer. My belief is that we are the church. That's what the Bible says, is that we are the church. So there's a big difference in being the church and um, going to a church, being a part of a church organization. So, when something bad happens and you begin that transition out, now that transition can take months, it can take years to happen. Now, why do I say years? Because oftentimes when we leave, we don't really know. We don't realize what it is that, we don't realize that it's trauma, or, we've been manipulated or controlled or abused or, deeply wounded, or that old unhealed areas of wounding have been reopened by people that we believe to be safe, people that, um, we look to bring God to us, in a sense. So when we leave, we don't always realize. We could leave because we're feeling, angry, because what happens is we go into grieving. And when it is from a church organization, when the wounding, the trauma, whatever you want to call it, happens within the church organization, we grieve so many different things, and so many different aspects, because there's a tremendous loss. For one, trust. um, there's, because so many times now the teaching in the church is that, it's God first, right? And I believe that to be true. But the church teaches that the organization that you belong to or that you attend is God. And that's not true. If you want to actually look at sort of like what we would call like a godly order of things, it's God first, spouse, your children, the actual organization and service within that organization is much lower. But if you knew that, then you would be putting your your spouse and your children ahead of them, and you may not attend or serve in the way that you had been before. So that disrupts their whole flow of things. Anyway, that's a different subject. So when we're leaving, sometimes we leave out of anger, sometimes we leave, we're just hurt, whatever. And we are believing that it's something that we have done, right? We're not seeing it completely clear at the time that we're leaving. So we leave, and it's been so ingrained in us that we need to attend a church organization to be actually walking with God, or to be okay with God, so that God's happy with us, so that we aren't backslidden, that we aren't, in sin, A lot of times it's ingrained in us that we have to go to church in order to be a good Christian. And that just isn't even true. So when we leave the church, we start searching for another church because we're just believing that that either wasn't a good fit or, whatever our belief is. But there's still something within us that says we need to be in a church. And so then we go to another church, right? Or we look around, or we don't quite commit. And so this is all a transitional phase. Okay, this is a transitional phase. Now, if we're not very clear, we don't have a support system, somebody that, a coach or someone that says, hey, what happened to you is not right, step back, figure this thing out, get some healing, then we'll just go to another church. And oftentimes we find one based on our comfort zone, okay? And our comfort zone has been an unhealthy environment. So we're going to feel comfortable in an unhealthy environment. Now, it's not going to look unhealthy when we first go there, right? Because otherwise we wouldn't go there. We wouldn't have gone to our first church if it seemed unhealthy. Okay, so this cycle can continue for years and through many churches. Now, for me, it did. It did, and every single one was not healthy. Every single one brought some kind of additional wounding or trauma to me, and it seemed to just get worse and worse and worse as time went on, because I didn't realize that I was being abused, traumatized, wounded by church leaders within these organizations. I thought it was me, or I thought it was outside relationships, but ultimately I thought it was me, that it was, you need to be healed. You just need healing in that area. You need to have grace. You're just not mature enough in the Lord yet. There's all these different things that they tell us that are wrong with us to try and get us to feel like, it's just us, to excuse the bad behavior, the manipulation, the control, and all of that can go on. Now, I'm not saying that goes on in every single church, but I'm also not saying that it doesn't. So if you're in a church and you're happy there, awesome. But I can tell you that a good percentage of us are not. And the other thing is that we are not growing in our relationship with God by attending a church organization. And that's going to be another video for another time. And if you have questions about that, please let me know. I'd be more than happy to share, and talk with you more about that. Now, if it's negative and you're going to tell me that, I have to be in church, and, save it, because I'm not going to entertain that, because I have been there, I've done that. And I'm sure I've even probably said that to some people at one point or another too. And anyway, you're just barking up the wrong tree with that one. So bless you, love you, and enjoy that time. So anyway, back to the story. We can go, and it doesn't even have to necessarily be like an organized church. It can be a ministry that you're involved in, or that you may be calling your church, because I did that as well. When I left the actual organized church, I was also involved with other ministries, and I was finding fellowship there. Some were okay, some were good, some were bad, but there's also, some abuse in those as well. So there was that underlying feeling that I needed to be in a church organization to be right in my walk with God, because it was so deeply ingrained in me, and there was so much pressure coming to me about that. So that cycle continued for many, many years. And I also didn't know what was happening. I didn't even really know what was truly going on until a few years ago. Okay, because back then nobody was talking about church trauma. And even today, I have so many people, they ask me, what is spiritual abuse? What is church trauma? What is religious abuse? it's amazing to me that people still just don't even really know what it is. They know that something is wrong. They feel that in their spirit. They feel that inside, that something is not right within their organization, but they don't really know what it is. Okay. So the process of leaving, um, it can take from, months to years, because there is that, until you have that clarity, that revelation, and that really good support system, coach, somebody from the outside that can tell you, hey, this is not right. You do not have to be involved in an organized church or organized religion in order to have a relationship with God, or to grow in your relationship with the Lord, or your spiritual walk, or whatever it is that you want to call it. That oftentimes nowadays doesn't even happen within the organized church anymore, because there's this whole generation that's been raised up in the church that they don't really have a clue. Honestly, they don't know the word of God, really. They don't have relationship with the Lord. They're just groomed from, other church, organized church leaders. And it's really sad. It really is heartbreaking, because, I love the Lord, and he just isn't being represented very well. And honestly, in most of those buildings, he's not even there. Just isn't. It may look like a form of godliness, but it just isn't. So anyway, that can go on and on and on. Now, the stages, we go into a grieving process. Now, it's not something that we wake up and say, okay, I'm going to start grieving now. That isn't how it happens. What happens is it's just something that goes on internally, right? We can be angry, we can be depressed, we can have anxiety, we can begin to bargain with God. We can begin to, we go into this denial about what's happening. And a lot of times when we go into that denial thing, then we can actually diminish what was going on. It wasn't that bad. It wasn't, maybe it was just me. We can kind of go through that whole thing, and then we end up right back there. And we also will have people from our old church drawing us in. Well, really, was it that bad? Was it really worth leaving over? And so that can pull us back in. And so when I coach people, and in our spiritual healing circle, I give you tools to help you not get sucked back into that cycle, and to help you work through your emotions and these stages of grief and these stages of actually leaving the church and not finding yourself back in there. So you can become, depressed and confused, and feeling this like lack of focus, lack of purpose, and the guilt and the shame that can come along with that. And there's so much that is involved with that. And so these stages, it's like this whole thing can take months to years. And that's why having a really good support system, having a coach, being involved in a group like the Spiritual Healing Circle, we can help you walk through that and save some time, save some life, save some emotions, and help you to make some healthy choices, so that that cycle doesn't go on and on for years, and it can just last for, a couple of months. And you can also connect with like-minded people that who are actually like growing in their spiritual relationship, right? And the other thing that can happen too is, for me, I had a really hard time getting into my Bible, and I still have a difficult time with that, because that was one area, that was one thing that was really used against me. And so I was just getting triggered, and it created a lot of confusion. it created a lot of anger in me at times, because we talked about, the different stages that we go through. I would get really nervous. I'd have anxiety, and I wouldn't understand what was going on with that. So that was just part of my process. Now I'm a lot better. I can pick it up now, and I can go back. I had those scriptures that were highlighted, and little notes in it, and I can look at that and feel good about it, and sort of move forward now without having so many negative emotions and things attached to it, because I've gone through some healing. Now it's still a process. For some, they completely walk away from God for a time, and that's okay too. Okay, because it's a process. Now, when you're not coming back to that, when you've gone, the complete opposite, and the anger and all of that just really gets ingrained into you, and you get caught up in let's see, how can I say this, into another organized I want to say cult-like setting, because that's kind of what it creates, religious, even though it's not, centered around God. Then you're kind of jumping from one problem to another problem. Okay, you're just setting yourself up for yet another type of abuse. Okay, and that's when it becomes very unhealthy and more wounding starts. But just taking a step back and just, I don't want to hear about God. I don't want to hear, about the church. I don't want to do any of that. That is completely normal. That is a normal part of the process. And another thing that is completely normal is, we call it Christianese. There's a lot of these words that Christians use within the church that the rest of the world doesn't even, it's on a part of vocabulary. Okay. And most of them are not even biblical. They're just sort of, I don't know. I don't know where they come from. Okay. And those words can be a trigger, and they can, just, you can get angry, you can get anxiety ridden. And that's okay too. That is okay too. And that is a part that makes it very difficult coming out of the church, because most of us, it's like our inner circle of people, our, most of our friends, and we, you kind of live in this church bubble. And then when you get out of that, it's very hard to relate to people outside of that bubble, because our language is different from their language, and we're dealing with all this guilt and shame, and I should be in church, but I'm not. Is it me? What's wrong with me? We have our churchy people from the church they're trying to re-recruit us, and they're pressuring us, and they're shaming us, they're guilting us, they're, telling us, they're basically still continuing the cycle of abuse, right? They're manipulating and trying to control us, but they use subtle tactics. Some do, some don't. Some will just come right out and say, you're backslidden, you're in sin, you need to come back. And that's all wrong. And so when we go into the world, there's this whole, we don't even know how to relate half the time. So we really have to find a way. And that's why I recommend getting a coach, doing some one-on-one coaching, is because we really need some kind of support and guidance, and a place to process and learn what we're going through, and to get those tools that can actually help us in our new way of living in our walk with God, in our like understanding why we don't want anything to do with God right now, and feeling bad because you feel bad about that. But you have the anger, the bargaining, the denial, the depression, the anxiety, the lack of focus, the lack of clarity. All that stuff is going on internally as well. And so where you go through so much. And so having a coach is great because that person can help bring balance and equip you and teach you how to process and work through these emotions in a healthy way without getting stuck, and also learning and teaching you what it was that you went through. And it can just help bring clarity and bring peace and um, remove like the guilt and the shame, and help you work through, process your anger and the depression and the anxiety and all of that stuff that comes with it, and also help you to not end up in another unhealthy situation. And the lack of sleep and all of the stuff that goes on because you're under incredible amounts of stress, and stress takes a toll on your body physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. And the bottom line is that it is okay. Like you are wherever you're at, that's okay. If you're mad at God, that's part of it. That is just part of the process. He knows that. He knows that. And that's okay. Like just rest. You don't have to go to another church organization or group if you don't want to. That is okay too. Take some time off. You're fine. If you don't want to read your Bible and you want to get rid of it, get rid of it. You can always get another one. I recommend just packing it away out of sight for a while, for a good like 6 months or what have you. I got rid of a lot of my Bibles and I kind of regret that because there was a lot of notes and things. I wish I would have just packed it away. That's just a tip for you. Even if you say right now, I don't want anything to do with it, I never want to see it again, that's okay. Just pack it away. Give it to a friend to hold on, or a family member, or somebody that can hang on to that for you. That's just a little tip. But anyway, that's just part of the process. Some of the stages that we go through, it is actually the full grieving process that we go through. And on top of it, we're also dealing with physical and emotional responses, triggers, we call them, because we've been wounded. And some of us were more wounded, than others. Everybody processes it differently. And so, you could not be sleeping, and lack of sleep creates a whole host of other things too, that just pile on top of the already stages of grief that we're going through, and the guilt and the shame and all of that. So I hope this helps you on some level understand. And if you can relate to any of these feelings or thoughts, please let me know. If you'd like information on getting into the Spiritual Healing Circle, let me know that as well. Just comment below. If you're interested in one-on-one coaching or want any information about that, if you need help with any aspect of this, just let me know. Comment below, or just reach out in a way. You don't have to, comment everything. You can just find a way to connect with me and go to my website and send me an email, Instagram. Just reach out and get in touch, and we'll talk. I hope that helps you. If you know of a friend or somebody that needs to hear this, then share it with them. Like and subscribe so that you get notifications from me. And the next video is I want to talk about like what you can expect when you do leave an organization, because that's a whole thing in itself too. It's not as simple as just leaving without any repercussions. So I love you. And I hope that you're getting some sort of rest and peace and um, in this crazy time right now. And then also, what if you're in a church that you don't like or something's not going good for you there, then yeah, I feel for you. I understand. I really do. So anyway, I love you. Thanks for watching. And until next time, I hope you're filled with peace and blessings and lots of joy.